before time. A woman was living with her father on the edge of a lake and was lured away by the fulmar birds, which are these evil birds that said, "Come with us to the land of birds." She falls into the underworld where she's basically mated with a demon, and this is the Indian legend of how these demons were born. It Waits was originally written by two writers who, strangely enough, were under contract to my studio back when I was doing television, Richard Matheson and Tom Salzay. They said, we can set this up with a French producer.
And I was set up to direct it, and it was going to shoot in the UK. And the deal ended up falling through.
Lack of financing, the guy couldn't pull it together and everything, and the thing was on the market again. And now we had put a deal together with IDT, and I really had a place to go with it. And my only thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to make a woman and not a guy. In their initial draft, the forest ranger was a guy. His name was Mike. And I actually wrote the love story between Danny and Justin, her boyfriend, which really wasn't in the script, and which was my contribution.
Steven knows what he wants out of the film. He's so down to earth and easy to deal with, and so professional and so smart that it's an absolute cakewalk. Steven did a little cameo in the first film that I directed, and we kind of hit it off. He liked the way I worked, and of course I had a huge amount of respect for him, and we kind of on and off kept in touch.
And then when Richard and Tom set this movie up with this French financer, lo and behold, who's the director but Steve Monroe? So I called him up, I went, this is amazing, you know, and so when that deal fell apart, I just thought, you know, it's in the cards here, you know, Steve's got to do this picture.
Cerina was, every director says this, but this is true in this case. She was my first choice. She was at the top of my list for a lot of reasons. One, I knew that she could bring the curve to the character that we needed, that everybody would like her no matter what her story in the past was.
This picture really hinges on the actress Cerina Vincent. She carries this movie. And it's a lot of work, you know, for one performer to carry a movie.
And I knew she could hit the dramatic moments too, which were very, very key in this to me, because I wanted the dramatic elements to stand out in the horror film.
After Cabin Fever, a lot of different horror movies kind of came my way, and so I wasn't quite so sure I wanted to do it again. And but I read the script, and Stephen Cannell wrote a really great script with a really great, complex role for me, and so I couldn't turn it down.
Dominic was like a real last-minute change. We had somebody lined up who fell through at the last moment, and the producers who were handling the production up in Vancouver had just done a film that Dominic was in, and they got me his demo reel, and his demo reel was overwhelming. It was a hard acting job to play that character, because if it wasn't done right, he could come off as a pretty annoying boyfriend, and Dominic nailed it.
Just his eyes, he just really helped me get there emotionally, just looking at him. That's always wonderful to work with, you know, a really great actor.
This demon is riddled with contradictions. It's angry but cold, playful but it's murderous. It escaped the underworld once before and was carelessly called to the surface by shamans looking to harness its unearthly power.
When you hear the legend of this creature, you're already kind of entranced to a certain point. And we had Eric Schweg in this. Eric brought an enormous amount, because the second you see him, he already makes you believe everything, because he's so authentic.
I don't really have time to get a label or a lecture on mysticism.
You're a protoped. It's gonna make it that much harder.
Alex the parrot, he was great.
Yeah, Hoppy. I mean, I've never ever worked with a parrot before, or any animal.
That sucks. From the original script to this one, there were different animals. So the joke always was, you know, is it going to be a monkey? Is it going to be a bird? What's it going to be? And then all of a sudden, Stephen Cannell saw some footage on this African grey parrot, and he was completely blown away with it.
I got very fascinated by African greys because they have such high IQs. An African grey parrot is supposed to have the highest IQ of almost any animal on the planet, and that would include chimps and dolphins and stuff like that.
They can actually talk to you. It's crazy.
Because we didn't have the budget for a trained animal, turns out, I find out later, that they just went to a pet shop and got a bird and then hired a trainer just to wrangle the bird. So the bird had no background to go, so he didn't want to do anything. So he didn't talk, so he ended up having to loop all of his stuff.
I started working in special effects in '97 with Tony Gardner at Alterian Studios. My first project was The Incredible Hulk before it would turn CG.
He was recommended by Tony Gardner at Alterian as this is the best guy to be in this suit. I took Tony's word for it, and then the first time we did a suit fitting, and Matt was sitting there, and I said something to him, and he did something weird with his eyes, and I went, yeah, that's the guy, definitely like that. The development of the creature suit, it started the earliest out of anything. We went with Tony Gardner's team over at Alterian for a number of reasons. His background isn't just creature work. He's an expert in all prosthetics and everything.
Usually what happens is that the producer comes to Tony with a concept, and then they have a sketch artist work on some different sketches. They build a maquette, and they work with the producers, and it's a lot of trial and error.
We were trying to come up with a concept for this thing, and there was a little clay statue that was sitting up on a shelf. And I said, well, that's kind of what it is. And he takes it down and he goes, well, this is a clay mold that we made that we never used. I went, oh. So it gave us a tremendous head start. One of the things that we sort of learned was that a creature that doesn't have human qualities to it tends not to be as scary. So, we decided we had to have an actor in there, and that the actor's teeth and mouth had to basically be his, so that he could operate the expressions of this creature.
We always knew that you would see small bits and pieces of it for the first 2/3 of the film. We just always made sure that the creature was either only backlit or just side lit. So, we ended up going with kind of a very dark greenish tint to this creature. It's an it. It's not a male. It's without gender, but the core of the story is that they think it used to be female.
And that might be one of its weaknesses.
That's not going to be scoring very many points to the National Women's Caucus.
Not weak because it's female, weak because somewhere deep in its psyche it still nurtures, it still cares.
Danny's put herself out in this forest to exercise her own demons, and this demon kind of knows it. It picks up on that because it is female. It's picking up on her female instincts. What makes it the most unique is it's not just out there running around and killing for revenge. It's almost like a game for this thing. There's a line in the film that says, like a cat playing with a mouse after it, before it kills it. That's what this creature does. It ended up being a total of, 20 days with 2 days of second unit by the time all was said and done, which is really rough when you're dealing with all those elements. And this type of a story, too. The location has to be perfect because you're spending 80% of the film in that location.
Vancouver was great. The people were great. Canadians are awesome.
And as you may or may not know, I shot a lot of television up there. Wise Guy I shot in Canada, 21 Jump Street I shot in Canada, Booker I shot in Canada, Commish I shot in Canada. I shot a lot of stuff. I built the North Shore Studios, which is the largest studio in Canada.
Primarily, besides Cerina, I was the only one from LA up there. For me, I like to work with people that I know and trust because it's not only a time thing, but it's just an understanding. So I had to completely start from scratch on this one. The only other difficulty to me, which was under nobody's control but God, was the weather. I mean, it pretty much dumped every day, I think, except for 2 days. And one of those days, we were interior. And the other day, the sun popped out 2 or 3 times, and then by the time the sun went down and we were still shooting at night, it was pouring again.
I'm from Vegas. I'm from the desert, and then I live in Southern California. And so, the first day I got there, I'm like, oh, it's raining. It's so nice. We never get rain. I love it. And they were like, trust me, you're not gonna like it. By day 3, I was like, okay, this isn't funny anymore. Somebody turn it off.
The first day I remember getting out, it must have been sometime around 9 o'clock in the evening, and the rain was just falling sideways.
It cost a lot. It cost a lot of time, it cost a lot of energy, and it cost a lot of, what we could have done with the scene, what we couldn't, because there's already 10 inches of rain by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then, we get there, and we're shooting the first day, and we get like one shot off with it, and they go, okay, the parrot's got to go back now. He's cold. I said, really? They said, well, they're tropical. They freak out in the cold. They lose their energy, and they pass out. I'm like, it's going to be cold for the next 3 weeks.
And it's making things kind of difficult. As you can see, we're all wet. It's not supposed to be raining because the monster isn't supposed to be around when there's rain. So all these amazing people trying to keep everybody dry and cameras dry and the actors dry and the bird warm so the bird doesn't die. Oh my God.
Originally it was the creature's afraid of water. I'd call Cannell in the morning and I'd say, man, it's pouring again, and we're going to see it on film. So now what we've done is we've adapted a little bit on the storyline, is that the creature doesn't like water. So if it has to, it'll deal with it. So we were able to edit around it for the most part, but, as difficult as it was, it adds a great visual mood.
I think the hardest part about shooting a horror movie or like action or things like that is all the things that feel so false, and you're supposed to react and freak out and cry, and it feels so fake.
You have to make people feel like they're there. The only way to make them feel like they're there is to bring that out, onto the screen. In situations like this, I like to do a lot of handheld work. The minute the camera is in there handheld with the characters, you're bringing the audience into it with them. To the actors, it always seems like I'm more actor-oriented. To the crew, it tends to seem like I'm more camera-oriented. But I'm very in check with that balance, because I think it's very important. I have to keep both sides engaged. If you have actors that are losing confidence, or if you have crew that are losing interest, you're in trouble.
If he ever had any advice, he'd come and talk to me and let me know his thoughts, and he was really easy to work with.
Ready and action!
The flashback of the car accident was actually the first day of shooting.
Which I thank him for, because it looked so real. I don't know if you've ever been in a car accident, but just the thought of it brings tears to my eyes.
To me, it was always clear that we should only see the aftermath of it, because I can make that much more brutal than trying to shoot a car crash with no money. Everybody's seen car crashes. So what can I do to this nightmare of hers to enhance it? And to me, her waking up in the middle of the road, seeing blood and glass and your car upside down and your friend laying there, is much more brutal than seeing the car hit and flip in a movie setting. We had to shoot it really quick, and it was very, very emotional for Cerina.
Because that's a big, huge part of Danny's character, and this whole transition that she's going through, the guilt and everything that she's feeling, from killing her friend. No! So it was really wonderful to have that to flash back to when we were shooting the rest of the movie. Please.
It's basically like wearing a wetsuit about 1 inch thick or 2 inches thick. And so fortunately, because of the cold weather, it worked fairly well to keep me insulated, and it was kind of nice and toasty. It starts off, you need to be in something tight fittings. There was this head cowl, it was really tight actually, and it kind of tore my hair when we were putting it on first couple times. Then you put the chest piece on, and then you put the gloves on, and you glue everything down. Then there's an actual facial appliance that is applied to the face, and then we have a contact lens tech that puts in the sclera lenses that are about 3 times the size of normal contact lenses. And then we also have the dentures, of course, that are made of acrylic. It took about 3 hours, first thing in the morning. You like that? Yeah. That better? I've got extensions on it this long, and if I do a whole lot of this movement, it's going to look all wobbly on my fingers.
There was a lot of things that we had to cut around, like even with him digging into her leg, the second his nails and his finger touched her leg, they bent backwards.
The wings were pneumatic wings. They were cable operated for some shots, but they're also remote operated for other shots. And they were done by a company called Film Illusions, mostly aluminum. I think they weighed probably about 40 or 50 pounds, but they had a pretty good range of motion, and they fit underneath the costume itself. People want to believe that it's a creature, not some guy in a suit, and so you have to do your best to play with the suit, and if it's moving in a certain way because of how it's built, you have to make it look natural.
All the other dead bodies were all life casts. Always had a lot of blood on the set. I always say if you're going to have a brutal death, you've got to have a lot of blood. A couple of other little prosthetic pieces, like her leg wound, which got the name Leggina, which you guys probably won't be able to use. You can ask Cerina about the Leggina.
It looked like a giant vagina. Sorry, but that's what it looked like. And I attached it and then bloodied it up and everything. It was absolutely disgusting. I mean, it was big. It was huge.
Cerina pretty much never griped for 1 second on the entire film. If you look at some of the footage, you can see she handled it, as did I, by laughing about it. And there's very few actors that will do that. The first time we had to do something with her running and falling, they had the stunt double there. When I said, I think Cerina's probably going to want to do it. And she came over and she said, no, I'm going to do my fall. And the stunt coordinator, hem and haw, didn't want to do it. And I said, she's going to be fine. She's done her own stunts before. She used to be a Power Ranger.
My character's name was Maya, and I was from the planet Miranoi. And I morphed into the Yellow Power Ranger.
She did the fall herself, and then, I think it was 2 takes later, she goes, oh, ow, and look, and there's blood coming down her arm, and she's got a big splinter stuck in the palm of her hand. Came in, brought the first aid in, pulled the splinter out, she went right back and did it again. We scrambled brutally to get every piece of that ending sequence. I would say 80% of that finale is cheated one way or another. We were not able to shoot anything in continuity except for the spans of Cerina's close-ups while she's driving. We shot all those at once on one same road.
I had so much fun doing the driving stunts when I was able to do them, and then I think they just got too freaked out. So I had this really awesome stunt woman who did a lot of the driving stuff.
We had the small IMO cameras, which used to be World War II combat newsreel cameras, and I would grab that camera, run down the road, and get a shot of the Jeep flying past or swerving down the road like that.
I think I spent it was 1 or 2 full days on a moving Jeep, and by the end of it I had bruises all over my inner thighs and shoulders from wearing the harness that was attached to the hood of the Jeep.
I didn't want to make an action sequence out of it, I wanted just to feel like everyone jumped in that car with her. She's scared to death. Everybody's typecast in this business, and because I hadn't done a horror film, nobody would have given me one except for Steven.
I'm at a point in my life where if it's not fun, to hell with it. And Steve made this a lot of fun for me and for everybody else on the company.
It was rough. It was a tough shoot, and he kept it together and was always very specific and cool and calm and collected. We became good friends, and I just adored working with him, and hopefully we'll work together again.
I've never done a horror film, and I've always wanted to. So it was, I was really able to dig my claws into this, so to speak, and, bring something to it